Today we are going to deal another topic in the plant physiology paper, that is based on nitrogen metabolism or nitrogen assimilation. Based on the present situation of COVID-19, we are trying to deliver online classes, and there are some limitations for this online classes. You may not be able to follow the figures and diagrams very closely. So I always suggest that you may have the textbook with you, either an e-copy or a hard copy. The textbook what we follow in this paper, Plant Physiology, is the Plant Physiology book written by Theis and Zeiger. And if you have any copy or a hard copy of the same, try to keep the book along with you and try to follow the figures very closely. Then you may have a better understanding of the what is being described over here. Now, you know that nitrogen metabolism is very essential for the plants, because the nitrogen is very essential for the amino acid synthesis and all. And nitrogen is available in plenty in the atmosphere, but that is not available directly to the plants. So plants has to depend on the nitrogen what is available in the atmosphere, but it is not directly assimilable for the plants. Why it is not assimilable for the plants directly? Because breaking of an exceptionally stable triple covalent bond between two nitrogen atoms to produce ammonia or nitrate, because the nitrogen is combined with a triple bond, and breaking of that seems to be very tough. Only if nitrogen is broken, the nitrogen combined with either hydrogen or oxygen to form ammonia or nitrate. And one of the process which has been developed in science is the Haber-Bosch process to synthesize ammonia artificially. What they do over there is that under elevated temperature, about 200 degrees centigrade and very high pressure of 200 atmospheres, the triple bond of nitrogen is broken, and nitrogen is now free to combine with hydrogen to form ammonia. That is what they do to synthesize ammonia artificially. The synthesis of urea and all is based on this process. So industrial production of nitrogen fertilizers are possible now, and that is generally being supplied to the plants for supplementing the nitrogen requirements. And it is documented that around 80 into 10 to the power of 12 gigatons of ammonia is synthesized, or nitrogen fertilizers are synthesized in a year. But this is also very insufficient for the plants in the whole world, because when you see one of the other account, like 190 into 10 to the power of 12 gigatons per year, ammonia synthesis is being, or fixation of nitrogen is being done in a year by natural process. So not even the half of what is being done in the natural process comes up through the industrial process. So that is the variation. In the industrial process, it is 80 into 10 to the power of 12 gigatons per year, and in the natural process, the nitrogen fixed amounts to around 190 into 10 to the power of 12 gigatons per year, of which the lightning contributes around 8%, and majority is through nitrogen fixation by bacteria. Now, if you look into the role of lightning, as I told you, it is only 8% of the total nitrogen fixed. Lightning can contribute only 8% of the nitrogen fixed. The lightning can convert water vapor and oxygen into highly reactive hydroxyl free radicals, free hydrogen atoms and free oxygen atoms that can attack the molecular nitrogen. So when lightning, there is high energy is passing when lightning occurs, and because of that the water vapor and oxygen is converted into highly reactive hydroxyl free radicals and free hydrogen atoms and free oxygen atoms. and this free means it's nothing but is a structure wherein the electron has been lost. So, in order to gain the electrons, they immediately go and attack the nitrogen, and as a result of that, nitric acid is being formed. This nitric acid does not remain in the atmosphere, but as you know, immediately after lightning there will be a rain, and through the rain the nitric acid comes down to the soil. So, that is the 8% contribution of the natural process, and 2% comes from the photochemical reactions. Approximately 2% of the nitrogen fixed is derived from photochemical reactions between gaseous nitric oxide and ozone, again producing nitric oxide. So, there is a high light utilizing the energy of the sun, there is a reaction between the gaseous nitric oxide and ozone, and that produces nitric acid. Again it is not going to remain in the atmosphere, by the way of rains it comes down into the soil. Again I have to remind you, it is only 2%. So, 8% from the lightning, 2% from the photochemical reactions, and it amounts to total 10%. But the major chunk comes from the biological nitrogen fixation. As you see from here in this slide, the remaining 90% results from the biological nitrogen fixation, in which bacteria or blue-green algae, cyanobacteria, in fact it is cyanobacteria, it fixes nitrogen into ammonia. So, this is the major source of nitrogen fixation happening naturally, and only a little portion is happening through the artificial means, or through the lightning or photochemical reactions. Now, I would like to remind you about a stored regarding the stored ammonia or a nitrate which goes into the living body. It can be highly toxic for the living body. As you see from these slides, the nitrate, the fixed nitrogen, when it enters into the living body of the plants or animals, the nitrate can combine with the hemoglobin, and when you combine with the hemoglobin, the situation derives called as methemoglobinemia. This is a situation in which the hemoglobin is not able to carry or combine with oxygen and carry oxygen. So, that is a bit dangerous situation. So, nitrate combining with hemoglobin is a dangerous situation. Also, the nitrate, when get converted into nitrosamines, that is another form of nitrate getting converted into another form, nitrosamines, this turns to be highly carcinogenic. So, carcinogenicity can be derived from nitrosamines, which is getting derived from nitrates. And another dangerous situation of ammonia could be that ammonia, when it is in the body, it dissipates the transmembrane proton gradient. So, as you see from the reaction here, the ammonia dissociates, and ammonia, as and when it dissociates, you can see ammonia reacts with H plus, and NH3 form goes into the cells, and NH3 combines with H plus, and on combination with the H plus it becomes NH4 plus. So, the proton gradient, the amount of H plus protons in the lumen, intermembrane space or the vacuole gets lowered because of this situation, and that is again going to disrupt the transmembrane proton gradient. And you may ask me, what is the significance of this? So, transmembrane proton gradient is very important. If you are reminded of the chemiosmotic model of ATP synthesis and all, because a proton gradient is very much essential for a ATP synthesis, because only if you have a gradient, the protons will be pumped out through ATP synthase, and that will culminate in the synthesis of ATP. So, when this proton gradient is disrupted because of this particular ammonia status, the dissociation of ammonia and combining again with a proton, the gradient is disrupted, and that disruption finally result in a dangerous situation for the cell. So, as I told you again, I would like to remind, whatever ammonia or nitrate is being synthesized in the atmosphere or in the soil, when it is taken up into the plants, it may create a dangerous situation for the plants, and that is being listed over here. One is the combination of the nitrate along with the hemoglobin, and if it comes into the animal body, and another is the conversion of nitrate into nitrosamines, which may be carcinogenic for the living organisms. And third is ammonia dissipates the transmembrane proton gradient, which may result in the disruption of ATP synthesis process. Now, the nitrogen available to plants are, as I told you earlier, the two forms is nitrate and ammonia. And when these forms enter into the plant body, we already seen what could be the dangerous situation. So, normally the plants, when uptake ammonia or nitrate, they are immediately converted into other forms that we will be seeing later. So, nitrogen is available to plants in these two major forms, that is nitrate and ammonia, and ammonia is available through fixation and microbial decomposition. Fixation processes already we have seen 90% of the natural nitrogen fixation ammonia obtained is through the nitrogen fixation process. And microbial decomposition also can contribute towards the availability of ammonia to the plants. Now, that is one source. Another is a nitrate, and nitrate is generally not bound because nitrate is an anion, and anions are generally not bound to the soil particles, and hence there are chances that they are generally washed or leached off from the soil. So, plants has less availability towards the nitrate. Immediately if nitrate is formed in the soil, it has to pick up. Otherwise, this nitrate, which is very loosely bound to the soil particles, can just get washed off by rain. So, the most available form of nitrogen is ammonia because it is a cation, and this cation can have a very tight hold on to the anionic soil particles. So, that will remain there even if a big rain comes off and there is a rush of water also, it will not get washed off from the soil. So, major of the nitrogen coming into the plant would be more in the form of ammonia, because nitrate, even if it is there in the soil, there are chances that they get washed off and finally they may reach the oceans. Ammonia is converted, once it is taken up into the plant body or before taking up into the plant body, ammonia is converted to nitric acid by soil bacteria. If ammonia is in the soil but not taken up by the plants, the soil bacteria will act upon that and convert it into nitric acid. And even if nitric acid is formed, no worries are there, because nitric acid will dissociate to H plus and NO3. So, again that NO3 can be absorbed into the leaves by into the plants by because nitrate and ammonia is the absorbable forms of nitrogen for the plants. So, even if ammonia gets converted into nitric acid, they dissociate into H plus and nitrate, and that nitrate can be taken up into the plants. Now, once nitrate is in the plant body, the conversion of nitrate has to occurs into nitrite, that is NO3 is nitrate that gets converted into NO2, and the enzyme which acts upon this process is a nitrate reductase that catalyzes this reaction. And you see here NO3 plus NADPH plus H2 plus 2 electrons give rise to nitrite. Okay. So, here the enzyme nitrate reductase is responsible for the conversion of nitrate to nitrite, and the most common form of nitrate reductase uses only NADH as an electron donor. Here you are seeing NADPH, but the most common form of nitrate reductase is using only NADH, and only in very rare cases, because there are some forms like for example, another form of the enzyme that is found predominantly in non-green tissues such as roots can use either NADH or NADPH. If it is a non-green tissue, they have the freedom to use either NADH or NADPH, but generally the most common form of nitrate reductase can use only NADH as electron donor. The nitrate reductases of higher plants are composed of two identical subunits, and they have three prosthetic groups along with that. One is FAD, flavin adenine dinucleotide. The second prosthetic group is HEM, and the third one is molybdenum. And all these are complex to a organic molecule called terine. And this is the structure what you see here is a structure is an organic molecule, and this organic to that organic molecule these prosthetic groups are attached, and you can see a detailed structure over here. This is the nitrate reductase structure. Three prosthetic groups are there: FAD, HEM, and molybdenum. And this is dimer form. And here you can see NADH. The reducing power is NADH, receives electron, and finally it is transferred to NO3, and NO3 is converted into NO2, that is the nitrite. The FAD binding domain accepts 2 electrons from NADH or NADPH. See here, the 2 electrons are each accepted from NADH or NADPH depending upon the electron donor. We already discussed NADPH would be mainly in NADH, and NADPH freedom would be in the case of non-green tissues, but majorly it would be NADH. The electrons then pass through the HEM domain to the molybdenum complex, where they are transferred to the nitrate. So, from FAD to HEM, then to molybdenum complex, and finally to the nitrate. And down you can see the process of electron transfer over here from NADH to FAD. FAD it gets converted into FADH2, then to molybdenum, which is 6 plus. On reception of electrons, it is converted into molybdenum 5 plus, then to nitrite, and which will result in the conversion of nitrate to nitrite. Now, we have to also understand that nitrate reductase is not a very simple enzyme. It is highly regulated, and I should remind you that these enzymes, major of this enzyme comes in the metabolic pathway, are highly regulated. And why they are regulated is because unnecessary functioning of these enzymes has to be prevented, because there is expenditure of energy. Already you have seen that the reducing power NADH is being utilized as a reducing power. So, unnecessary working of these enzymes, functioning of these enzymes is loss of energy. So, it will function only as and when required. So, because of this process, because of this reason, nitrate reductase, one of the major enzymes coming up in the nitrogen metabolism, is regulated. And here you can see 3 major factors are regulating nitrate reductase, that is nitrate, the amount of nitrate present, second light, and third carbohydrates. 3 important factors you should remember. One is the amount of nitrate present, the amount of light falling, the amount of carbohydrate present. Nitrate, light, and carbohydrate influence nitrate reductase at the transcription and translation level. At both levels it can influence the mRNA synthesis of nitrate reductase, and even in the final formation of nitrate reductase. Both at the transcription and translational levels, these 3 factors can influence. Light, carbohydrate levels, and other environmental factors stimulate a protein phosphatase. It is explaining how it is being regulated. It will stimulate a protein phosphatase that dephosphorylates several serine residues on the nitrate reductase protein. So, it is dephosphorylating the serine residues on the nitrate reductase protein, and thereby activating the enzyme. So, when light and carbohydrate levels or light is increasing, carbohydrate level is increasing, it can stimulate a protein phosphatase which is responsible for the dephosphorylation or removal of a phosphate from the serine residues on the nitrate reductase protein, and thereby this enzyme is activated. Now, operating in the reverse direction, it has to be inactivated also when these conditions are not conducive. How it is being regulated? Operating in the reverse direction, darkness and magnesium stimulate a protein kinase. Okay? Protein kinase means it's always phosphorylating. That phosphorylates the same serine reduce. Earlier it was a dephosphorylation, now it is phosphorylation. it will phosphorylate the serine reduce, which then interact with an inhibitor protein. The name of that inhibitor protein is 14-3-3 inhibitor protein, and thereby inactivate nitrate reductase. So it's a very good method of controlling the action of the nitrate reductase. When there is enough of light, enough of carbohydrate, it is being activated by dephosphorylation, and whenever there is darkness or the magnesium content is higher, it will stimulate a protein kinase phosphorylating the serine residues, and that way it is being inactivated. So this is a post-translational modulation of this enzyme taking place. Now you can see that here, whenever there is a light reaction, more of ATP is synthesized, and you can see the transport of stored nitrate from vacuole to cytosol for reaction. So light reaction is promoting. So when light reaction is happening, you know that more of ATP is being synthesized. In the non-cyclic photophosphorylation and cyclic photophosphorylation, more of ATP is synthesized. When more of ATP is there, there is a transport, because transport of stored nitrogen from the vacuole to cytosol require energy, and that is supplemented by the ATP synthesized through the photochemical reactions. And on the transportation of the nitrate from the vacuole to the cytosol, you can see the nitrate is now ready for the conversion to nitrite. Now, how photosynthesis is regulating or carbohydrate is regulating? When there is more of photosynthesis, more of carbohydrate synthesis takes place, and carbohydrate will be utilized in the respiratory process, and NADH formation will happen. And NADH is very essential for the nitrate reductase activity. So this is how the light and as well as the carbohydrate is going to regulate the photosynthesis, the nitrogen metabolism, or in fact, to be precise, the nitrate reductase activity. This is a very simple graph to tell you that the stimulation of nitrate reductase activity follows the induction of nitrate reductase mRNA in shoots and roots of barley. Here you see two peaks, one is the root mRNA and another is the shoot mRNA. These both green, one is this one and another is this one. So this light and this dark green are for the mRNA levels, and immediately corresponding to that you can see, or with the increase of the mRNA levels, you can see the root and shoot, what is given in pink and red colors. They are that is the level of root nitrate reductase as well as shoot nitrate reductase. The levels of both are going up. So the stimulation of nitrate reductase activity follows the induction. The first would be the induction of nitrate reductase mRNA, followed by the nitrate reductase activity in shoots and roots of barley. Nitrate reductase converts nitrite to ammonia. So now we have already converted nitrate to nitrite. Now nitrate has to be converted into ammonia for the further utilization by the plants. Nitrite reductase converts the nitrate to ammonia, and you may be knowing that nitrate is a bit toxic and highly reactive, and therefore the nitrite which is formed in the cytosol, the conversion of nitrate to nitrite takes place in the cytosol, and nitrate reductase is playing a role in that. We have already seen. But keeping the nitrite in the cytosol is not feasible, is a bit dangerous because it is toxic, highly reactive, and therefore this nitrite has to be immediately transported into the chloroplast. So plant cells immediately transport the nitrate generated by nitrate reduction from the cytosol into chloroplast in leaves and plastids in roots. So if it is in leaves, it will take into the chloroplast. If it is in roots, it will take into the plastids. And in these organelles, the conversion of nitrite to ammonia takes place. So obviously the action of nitrite reductase will be occurring in the chloroplast. And this is the reaction what happens over here. The nitrate, see here, this is the nitrate reductase enzyme, and you can see the ferredoxin is the reducing power, and by the light reactions the ferredoxin is getting reduced, and the ferredoxin supplies the electrons, and nitrate reductase converts nitrite to ammonia. So this is the process, and this is the reaction what has been shown in the top. Nitrite plus 6 ferredoxin, reduced form of ferredoxin plus 8 protons plus 6 electrons give rise to ammonia, and in this process the ferredoxin is getting oxidized and 2 molecules of water is also synthesized. Nitrite reductase is encoded in the nucleus and synthesized in the cytoplasm with an N-terminal transit peptide that targets it to the plastids. I already explained to you, nitrite reductase function is happening in the chloroplast, but the nitrite reductase is encoded in the nucleus and synthesized in the cytoplasm, but its function is there in the chloroplast. So it has to be carried, it has to be properly targeted into the plastids, and that is happening even if it is coded in the nucleus, synthesized in the cytoplasm. Once synthesized, it moves into the chloroplast where it is the site of action of this enzyme happens. Whereas nitrite and light induce the transcription of nitrite reductase mRNA, the end products of the process, asparagine and glutamine, represses this induction. So the light induce the transcription. Nitrite reductase activity is enhanced because of light, because more of light, you know, the ferredoxin reduction take place, and it is a very conducive environment for the higher activity of nitrite reductase. So light is basically promoting. And what is hindering the activity of nitrite reductase? Asparagine and glutamine. These are the end products of the synthesis of ammonia. So more end products are formed, it will have a feedback inhibition on this enzyme, and the enzyme activity, basically nitrite reductase. In short, I call it as NIR, nitrite reductase, and nitrite reductase is NR. So NIR activity is being reduced by the end product synthesis, that is asparagine and glutamine. It can repress the induction of this enzyme NIR, but light can promote the activity of that. Now in the next session we will be seeing about the structure and pathways of compounds involved in ammonia metabolism. So we have already seen the synthesis of ammonia, the uptake of nitrate from the soil, conversion to nitrite, conversion of the same into ammonia. And in the following session we will be seeing the pathways of compounds involved in the ammonia metabolism.